Through most of elementary school, I got straight E's, which were essentially the equivalent of an A, except in one class. In one class, I got an N, which means needs improvement. It was basically a D. And that class was art class. It definitely reinforced something really early on in my life, which is that I'm not an artistic person, right? I should not be doing the art stuff. A little over a year ago, when I first started getting into games development, I was using like a lot of store-bought assets, right? Because I was like, oh, well, I'm the programmer. I can't do the art. I can do the coding. I'll focus on that, and I'll just use asset packs and commissions to kind of make the rest of the pieces fit. But I realized after about a year of doing this, leading up to this point now, that it just wasn't going to cut it. I wasn't going to be able to make the types of games that I wanted to make using that approach. I needed more control. So I've been practicing art for the past month or so, mostly doing like YouTube tutorials and Udemy courses. It's primarily a mix of drawing and pixel art. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I think I've been making good progress. I think my art or the stuff I make at least like resembles something now. It kind of looks like something, which I think is good. And I wanted to kind of put my skills to the test a little bit and see, well, how hard is it actually to make a whole game using all art assets that you create yourself? So I decided to enter a 72-hour game jam and see if I could do it, see if I could make all the art assets myself. I had done a handful of game jams in the past, but I always used, asset packs. I focused mostly on, the game design, the mechanics, the coding. I hadn't done any art for a game jam before, so it was going to be a big undertaking for me, but something that I was really excited about and looking forward to. I participated in the mini Code for a Cause game jam, which was a 72-hour game jam. The theme for this was you only get one. I'm not going to go too deep into the brainstorming or programming parts of this process, but just know that early on, I kind of struggled. I was bouncing between a couple different ideas. The theme was really open for me, and it was hard to really hone in and focus on something. But I eventually kind of landed on this concept of a 2D pixel platformer where you use a soul boomerang, which is the one thing that you have based on the theme, to smash through obstacles and jump your way to victory in a kind of like Mario meets Breakout smash up. What did I learn from doing all of the pixel art for a game for the very first time? I realized wardrobe is super important, especially in pixel art, right? When you have a canvas size that's really small, a majority of your character's silhouette really comes down to what they're wearing, right? You can also think about things like hair and weapon, which are also really important parts of a pixel art character's identity. But their wardrobe is one of those things you really need to consider when you're doing your initial character design. For my character, I decided to kind of go with these baggier pants, kind of like an Aladdin style baggy pant, and then this tank top, as well as a mask with goggles, and then like a necklace, some type of like jewelry. These were all choices, right? And I think it's really important to make your choices, especially about wardrobe for your character early on, because it's going to affect the silhouette. It's going to affect everything. This might be obvious to some of you, but as somebody, kind of really picking up art and character design for the first time, it took me a second to wrap my head around how important wardrobe really is. I got much better at establishing front and back in my characters. This is kind of hard for me to describe, especially as like a new character artist, but one of the best ways to think about this is with a run animation, right? You need to establish a front leg and a back leg. So your back leg would be shaded a little bit darker than your front leg. And I'm talking primarily in terms of like a 2D platformer, right? Like a side scroller. Because if you think about the animation, right? If you don't know what leg is front and back, you're going to get this like weird kind of gallop where it's always going to look like the front leg is in the front. Versus when you are able to kind of differentiate front leg from back leg, that's when you kind of actually get that change up of leg. Okay, the back leg's in the front, now the front leg's in the front. And it's also really important too with just giving your character some volume and some form. This is definitely something I'm still struggling with, right? I still kind of resort to pillow shading at times. And there's still a lot I gotta kind of dig into here. Dynamic poses also make a big difference, at least for me, in terms of making the characters look interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of talented artists out there who do make a character just standing, straight up and down, arms by their sides, stiff-legged. There are great artists that can make that pose look good. I am not one of those. I need my characters to be in some type of dynamic pose to give them some visual interest. Knees bent, elbows bent, chest at a tilt, right? Some type of flow, just to make the character kind of pop a little bit more. It should have kind of a natural energy, a natural flow to kind of their silhouette. I think if you have them super straight up and down, it kind of takes a skilled artist, I think, to make that look good. But I still have a lot of improvement to do. In terms of the animations, I had done like 3 animations up until this point. Going into these animations, I really did not have a lot of practice at it. I didn't even really have a process for it. A lot of my process was standing up from my chair, actually physically putting my body into a certain pose I wanted to copy, and then kind of thinking about it that way, sitting back down on my chair and then trying to recreate that pose. That seemed to be the best process for me. I know a lot of people like to kind of, when they have their basic character, they break each piece of anatomy out into its own layer, and they can kind of rotate and move that as they need. But for me, I would just erase and redraw what was necessary. So maybe not the most efficient form of animating, but it gave me a lot of practice at constantly redrawing this character. I was fairly happy with the run animation. I think that turned out okay. The jump animation, however, I was a little less happy with at the time. I think it was fine, but looking back on it, it's definitely something I wish I would have put a little bit more time into. Primarily the pose, right? That kind of keyframe where he has like this kind of superhero pose thing going on. It's sort of like he's Superman taking off to go fly, and it just doesn't fit that character's identity really. I think I needed to take a beat there, spend more time exploring what that pose could be, maybe watch some different references to try and find what's a better way to make this type of character do a jump. And I think on top of that, I really relied a lot on silhouetting and a smear frame to kind of create a lot of motion, because that kind of basic superhero silhouette just wasn't really cutting it. So definitely something I wish I would have explored a little bit more. The environmental art was a whole other beast in and of itself. I'd only done a couple pieces of environmental pixel art up until this point. And this was also my first ever tile set. I hadn't done any tile sets prior to this. I think it kind of shows a little bit. I wasn't super happy with the environment, mainly that I think I needed to spend more time and effort on the tile set, the platforms, the breakable walls. The background isn't terrible, I think. It's really minimalist, and that's like this two-tone thing kind of going on with the sand dunes and mountains. It definitely could use some more detail and variety, but 72 hours, there's only so much you can do. Where I went wrong with the environment is I think I just didn't explore enough, right? I didn't find the right references. I just didn't have a clear idea of what the walls that the character should be breaking, what are those actually, right? I think I understood, okay, it's going to be in a desert, it's going to be this kind of boomerang, there's kind of this Prince of Persia-esque feel to it. But what exactly are these things? What is he standing on exactly? What is he breaking exactly? Walls in the middle of the desert don't really make sense. Black tiles in the middle of the desert don't really make a lot of sense. It should have kind of connected to that sand theme a little bit more. Even though it all kind of had the same palette, it matched in terms of the colors. It didn't match in terms of the concept. This was also my first time doing the visual effects by hand. I think they turned out okay. I think, I like the landing effect. It kind of sells that illusion that he's landing on some sand, I think. The big thing here was, again, where is he exactly? Like, he's in a desert, but what are these platforms? What is he jumping on? What is he breaking? These were all the questions I never solved. And I think it kind of trickles over to the visual effects, where I just kind of took the spray tool and I just kind of went to town to create these kind of explosions or these kind of like sandy effects, but they weren't really any figured out beyond that, right? And again, partly this is due to time limitations, but partly I just didn't figure it out. So how did I do on my first 72-hour game jam where I made all the art myself? Honestly, pretty good. I got 26th overall out of 149 entries. In terms of the art and aesthetic, I placed 19th. I think it really proved to me that I can not only make art that services the game, but maybe even elevates the game a little bit, which I was really, really happy about. I also received a lot of great comments and just feedback talking about the game, talking about the visuals and the aesthetic and the vibe that it helped create. I also want to give a shout out to Techhead, who is another Game Jam participant and also a streamer. And he did like 2 marathon streams, like 12 hours a piece, something like that, where he took time to play through everybody's games. And he took a little bit of time to play through my game. And this is what he had to say.
Ooh, okay, now I see the vision. I see the vision. Actually, this is kind of peak. Yeah, this has a really unique vibe. I like the transitions. I could definitely see this as a full game. It's a super unique concept, and it's got really good execution. I like how the boomerang squishes when it bounces. That was fun. Honestly, really fun game. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Graphics and visuals, I'll give it a 4. I will give it a 4. The animations are great. The art isn't super readable, if that makes sense, but yeah, great overall.
Well, it mostly means that if you're like me and you think you can't do art, you're probably lying to yourself. You probably can. If you take the time to do some YouTube tutorials, to maybe take a Udemy course, to maybe go to your local community college and take a drawing course, I bet you'll surprise yourself. I bet you'll be really shocked at what you're able to accomplish. I'm also going to keep making art, and I'm going to keep making games, and hopefully I'll make a full-length game using my art. And I'd love to have you follow along on that journey. Just don't tell my elementary school art teacher.